For centuries, the myths of ancient Greece have whispered tales of gods, heroes, and the terrifying creatures that lurked in the shadows. These beasts were not just figments of imagination, they were omens of doom, tests of fate, and punishments from the divine. In this video, we delve into the darker side of Greek mythology, exploring 10 of the most fearsome, awe-inspiring and nightmarish creatures ever recorded. Some were hunters, others were horrors beyond human comprehension, but all have left their mark on legend. Welcome to Tales of Myth and Magic, where folklore, legends and forgotten tales are brought back to life. If you enjoy the kind of stories that your ancestors once heard by firelight, then make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell so you never miss a tale. Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound of Hades, is one of the most famous creatures in Greek mythology. Known as the guardian of the Underworld, he serves as both a protector and a symbol of the unbreakable boundary between the land of the living and the dead. His terrifying appearance, with 3 heads, a serpent's tail, sometimes depicted with additional serpents protruding from his body, made him a formidable figure in ancient stories. However, despite his fearsome image, Cerberus was not merely a beast of destruction, but a key figure in several important myths, particularly in the 12 Labours of Heracles and the Tale of Orpheus. Cerberus was the offspring of 2 monstrous primordial beings, Typhon and Echidna. Typhon, the father of monsters, was a fearsome giant with 100 dragon heads, and Echidna, known as the mother of monsters, was half woman, half serpent, who gave birth to many of Greek mythology's most fearsome creatures. Among Cerberus' siblings were the Hydra, the Chimera, and the Sphinx, all of whom were formidable beings in their own right. As the watchdog of the Underworld, Cerberus was tasked with preventing the dead from escaping and ensuring that no living person entered without permission. This role aligned him closely with Hades, the god of the dead. Unlike many fearsome beasts of mythology that were obstacles for heroes to slay, Cerberus was more of a guardian than a killer. His job was not to attack indiscriminately, but to uphold the laws of the Underworld. One of the most famous myths involving Cerberus was the 12th Labour of Heracles, or Hercules in Roman mythology. As the final and most difficult of his 12 labours, Heracles was ordered by King Eurystheus to capture Cerberus and bring him to the surface world. This task was nearly impossible, as Cerberus was a monstrous beast residing in the depths of Hades' domain. To accomplish this feat, Heracles first sought permission from Hades, who agreed on one condition. Heracles could only take Cerberus if he subdued the beast without using weapons. Relying on his immense strength, Heracles wrestled Cerberus into submission, using his bare hands to hold back the snapping jaws of the beast. After successfully dragging Cerberus to the mortal world, Heracles displayed him before Eurystheus. The terrified king immediately ordered Heracles to return Cerberus to the Underworld, restoring the natural order. This story highlights Heracles' strength, courage and perseverance, while reinforcing Cerberus' role as a guardian who cannot be defeated by conventional means. Another significant myth featuring Cerberus is the story of Orpheus, the legendary musician and poet. When Orpheus' beloved wife died from a snakebite, he descended into the underworld to retrieve her. Armed with only his lyre, Orpheus played a song so hauntingly beautiful that it soothed even the monstrous Cerberus. Rather than fighting and overpowering Cerberus, Orpheus was able to pass the Guardian by appealing to his emotional nature, showcasing the power of music and art over brute force. The Trojan hero Odysseus also encounters Cerberus during his journey to the Underworld. Guided by Sibyl of Cumae, Odysseus and his companion must pass Cerberus to continue their journey. Sibyl, aware of Cerberus's ferocious nature, feeds him a drugged honey cake, which causes the beast to fall into a deep sleep, allowing them to pass unchallenged. This episode is similar to the Orpheus myth, and it shows a non-violent way to deal with the Guardian of the Underworld. The Empusa is often described as a shape-shifting, blood-drinking demon that preyed upon unsuspecting travellers at night. With a monstrous appetite for human flesh and an eerie ability to disguise itself, the Empusa became a dreaded figure, associated with nightmares, deception, and the supernatural. Unlike other mythological creatures that were merely obstacles to heroes, the Empusa was a relentless predator, lurking in the shadows and striking fear into all who encountered her. Empusa was said to be a servant of the goddess Hecate, the ruler of magic, ghosts, and the night. She was sometimes considered the daughter of Hecate and a spirit or a monstrous being, making her a creature of both divine and demonic origins. Though some myths describe multiple Empusa, in many traditions, Empusa is treated as a singular entity, a lone terrifying spectre that stalks the roads and feasts upon human flesh. Empusa was known for her hideous appearance. She had flaming hair, one brass leg and one human leg, giving her an eerie supernatural gait. However, her most dangerous trait was her ability to shapeshift into a beautiful woman, luring men into vulnerability before revealing her monstrous form and consuming them. Although references to the Empusa are scattered throughout Greek literature, she is most famously mentioned in Aristophanes' play The Frogs, where she is portrayed as a terrifying, ever-changing creature that haunts the night. Her ability to change forms at will made her a master of deception, making it difficult for her victims to distinguish her true nature until it was too late. Over time, the concept of the Empusa merged with later legends of vampires and succubi, seductive demons that drain the life force of their victims. The Harpies, terrifying winged creatures of Greek mythology, were known as the embodiment of storm winds, divine punishment, and relentless torment. Described as having the bodies of birds and the faces of women, they were feared for their speed, their screeching cries, and their unyielding pursuit of those cursed by the gods. Often associated with the punishment of wrongdoers, the Harpies were both enforcers of divine will and symbols of chaos, sweeping through the skies like avengers of the gods. The Harpies were said to be the daughters of Thamus and Electra, making them siblings to Iris, the goddess of the rainbow and divine messenger of the gods. Unlike their graceful sister, the Harpies were agents of fear and destruction, often depicted as monstrous and grotesque, with sharp talons and insatiable hunger. Their very name comes from the Greek word harpesian, meaning to snatch or to seize. This perfectly describes their role in mythology, stealing food, abducting souls, and carrying out divine retribution. They were said to reside in stormy winds, and were closely linked to sudden tempests that swept away ships and travellers. One of the most well-known myths involving the Harpies is their torment of King Phineus of Thrace. As punishment, either for misusing the gift of prophecy, or for revealing too much of the god's will, Zeus condemned Phineus to a life of torment. Every time he tried to eat, the Harpies would descend upon him, snatching away his food or fouling it so that it was inedible. Starving and desperate, Phineus had little hope of relief until the arrival of the Argonauts. When Jason and the Argonauts arrived in Thrace, they took pity on the cursed king. Among their crew were the Boreads, Calli and Zetes, twin sons of the North Wind, who had the ability to fly. They chased the Harpies across the sky, driving them away from Phineus for good. According to some versions of the tale, the Harpies were only spared when the goddess Iris intervened. The Harpies retreated to their distant dwellings, no longer meddling in human affairs, at least for a time. The Harpies continued to appear in various Greek myths as personifications of punishment and relentless pursuit. They were said to carry off wicked souls to the underworld, ensuring that the guilty faced divine justice. In some later interpretations, they became more closely linked with Hades and the Furies, serving as agents of vengeance. The Hydra is famous for its multiple heads and degenerative abilities. Known as the Lernaean Hydra, this monstrous serpent terrorised the region of Lerna and was considered nearly invincible due to its unique ability to regrow two heads for every one that was severed. Beyond its role in mythology, the Hydra carries deep symbolic significance, representing chaos, resilience, and the eternal struggle against overwhelming challenges. The Hydra resides in the swamp of Lerna, a region near Argos, where it terrorised both travellers and livestock. Its breath and blood were said to be extremely poisonous. Some versions of the myth also describe it as having an immortal head that could not be destroyed by conventional means. The Hydra's most famous appearance in mythology comes in the story of Heracles and his 12 labours. As part of his punishment for killing his family in a fit of madness induced by Hera, Heracles was assigned 12 nearly impossible tasks by King Eurystheus. The second of these was to slay the Hydra. Heracles travelled to the swamp of Lerna with his nephew Iolaus. Upon engaging the Hydra, he quickly realised that every time he cut one of the heads, two would grow in its place. The battle became even more difficult when Hera, who despised Heracles, sent a giant crab to assist the Hydra. Heracles crushed the crab underfoot, but the Hydra remained a persistent threat. Realising he could not win through brute force alone, Heracles devised a new strategy. As he severed each head, Iolaus cauterised the wound with a burning torch, preventing any new heads from growing. Eventually, Heracles reached the immortal head, which he buried under a heavy rock, ensuring the Hydra's destruction. He then dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood, making them lethal weapons in future battles. The Chimera is one of the most fearsome and fascinating creatures in Greek mythology. A monstrous hybrid, the Chimera is typically described as a fire-breathing beast, with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent. This strange and terrifying combination has made it one of the most iconic creatures in ancient myths. Unlike many mythological creatures that served as mere obstacles, the Chimera is deeply tied to divine punishment and heroism. Its role in the legend of Bellerophon and Pegasus has cemented its place in history as one of the most formidable creatures ever faced by a Greek hero. The Chimera's origins can be traced back to the monstrous lineage of Typhon and Echidna. As one of their offspring, the Chimera was imbued with a nightmarish combination of animal features, making it a force of destruction. Unlike its siblings, which often played the role of gatekeepers or guardians, the Chimera was a roaming terror, laying waste to the lands it inhabited. The beast was primarily associated with the region of Lycia, a kingdom in what is now modern-day Turkey, where it caused great devastation and was feared by all. The most famous myth involving the Chimera is the story of Bellerophon, a Corinthian hero who was tasked with slaying the beast. The tale begins with King Iobates of Lycia wanting to rid his land of the creature. He sent Bellerophon on what seemed like an impossible mission. The Chimera was nearly invincible, as it could breathe fire, and its hybrid nature made it difficult to combat. Bellerophon, however, had a divine advantage: Pegasus, the winged horse. With the help of Athena and the favour of the gods, Bellerophon mounted Pegasus and took to the skies, avoiding the Chimera's deadly flames. Armed with a spear tipped in lead, he flew above the beast and drove his weapon into its throat. The heat of the Chimera's own fire melted the lead, suffocating it and bringing about its demise. Although the original Greek myth is the most well known, later cultures adapted and expanded upon the story of the Chimera. In some versions, it was said to be an omen of disaster, appearing in visions to signal impending doom. The Minotaur, the half-man, half-bull monster of Greek mythology, is one of the most iconic creatures of ancient legend. Trapped within the winding maze of the Labyrinth, he became both a terror and a tragic figure. An embodiment of punishment, sacrifice, and the consequences of divine wrath. With the body of a powerful man and the head of a raging bull, the Minotaur was a being of unmatched ferocity. Yet his very existence was shaped by forces beyond his control. His legend is forever tied to the great hero Theseus and the cunning of Daedalus, the brilliant inventor who designed the labyrinth that became the creature's prison. The Minotaur story begins with King Minos of Crete, a ruler blessed by the gods, but cursed by his own deception. According to myth, Minos prayed to Poseidon for a divine sign to confirm his right to the throne. The sea god sent him a magnificent white bull, expecting Minos to sacrifice it in his honour. However, Minos, overcome by greed, kept the bull and sacrificed a lesser one instead. In punishment for his defiance, Poseidon cursed Minos' wife, Queen Pasiphae, to fall in love with the divine bull. Through the ingenuity of Daedalus, Pasiphae was able to conceive a monstrous offspring, the Minotaur. Born as a creature neither fully man nor fully beast, the Minotaur was a grotesque being of insatiable hunger and violent rage. As he grew older, his strength became uncontrollable, and Minos, ashamed of his monstrous stepson, ordered Daedalus to construct the Labyrinth, a vast, inescapable maze designed to imprison the beast deep beneath the palace of Knossos. The Minotaur's role in mythology is that of both a predator and a prisoner, a creature doomed to wander the labyrinth's endless corridors. His existence became part of a gruesome tradition. Every 9 years, Athens was forced to send 7 young men and 7 young women as a tribute to Crete, all whom would be sacrificed to the monster within the maze. The most famous tale of the Minotaur is that of Theseus, the great hero of Athens. Determined to end the suffering of his people, Theseus volunteered to be one of the sacrificial victims. However, upon arriving in Crete, he caught the eye of Princess Ariadne, daughter of King Minos. She fell in love with the hero and secretly aided him in his quest, giving him a ball of thread to help him navigate the labyrinth. With sword in hand, Theseus ventured into the winding maze, using the thread to mark his path. Deep within the twisting corridors, he encountered the Minotaur. The battle that followed was one of brute force and desperation. Theseus, relying on his agility and combat skill, evaded the creature's ferocious charges before ultimately striking it down, ending the reign of terror. With the Minotaur dead, Theseus followed the thread back to safety, escaping Crete with Ariadne. The Centaurs were a race of half-human, half-horse beings in Greek mythology, known for their dual nature, both wise and noble in some tales, yet savage and uncontrolled in others. They embodied the struggle between civilization and primal instinct, often depicted as wild and drunken warriors, yet also producing some of the greatest teachers and healers in myth. Their stories range from violent battles with heroes to deep mentorship of legendary figures. The origins of the centaur vary across myths, but one of the most common versions state that they were the offspring of Ixion and a cloud shaped by Zeus. This union resulted in a race of beings that were part human, part beast, torn between the human intellect and animalistic desires. Centaurs primarily lived in the mountains and forests of Thessaly and Arcadia, avoiding civilization and indulging in a life of hunting, drinking and feasting. Many centaurs were known for their unruly behaviour, often depicted as violent and uncontrollable, especially when intoxicated. One of the most famous myths involving centaurs is the great battle between the Centaurs and the Labyrinth. The conflict began when the Centaurs were invited to the wedding of Petrifying. During the festivities, the Centaurs, overwhelmed by wine, attempted to abduct the Labyrinth women, leading to a brutal war. With the aid of Theseus, the Labyrinths ultimately triumphed, driving the Centaurs from their land. This myth symbolised the Greek belief in the triumph of civilization over barbarism, with the Labyrinths representing order and culture, and the Centaurs embodying uncontrolled chaos. While most Centaurs were portrayed as wild and reckless, there was one exception: Chiron, the wise and noble centaur. Unlike his kin, Chiron was known for his intellect, kindness, and mastery of medicine and prophecy. He was said to be the son of the Titan Cronus, making him fundamentally different from other centaurs. Chiron became one of the greatest teachers in Greek mythology, mentoring famous heroes such as Achilles, Jason, and Heracles. Unlike his savage brethren, Chiron was revered as a symbol of knowledge, wisdom, and self-control. His fate was tragic. Accidentally wounded by a poisoned arrow from Heracles, he suffered unbearable pain but could not die due to his immortality. In mercy, Zeus allowed him to give up his immortality, and he was placed among the stars as the constellation Centaurus. The Cyclops were towering one-eyed giants, known for their immense strength and craftsmanship. Though often depicted as primitive and brutish, they played a crucial role in Greek mythology, both as allies of the gods and as formidable obstacles to heroes. Their image varies between myths. Some Cyclops were divine smiths, who forged powerful weapons, while others were lawless savages, who dwelled in isolated caves. Whether feared or admired, the Cyclops left a lasting mark on ancient Greek lore. The Cyclops appear in two distinct traditions within Greek mythology: the Hesiodic and Homeric traditions, each portraying them in different ways. Hesiod described the Cyclops as the children of Uranus and Gaia. These three brothers, Brontes, Steripes, and Arges, were master craftsmen, known for forging Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of invisibility. Imprisoned by their father Uranus, and later freed by Zeus, they became invaluable allies in the great war between the Olympian gods and the Titans. Their weaponry helped Zeus overthrow the Titans and establish his rule, forever securing the Cyclops' place as divine smiths. In contrast, Homer's Odyssey presents the Cyclops as wild, uncivilized beings who live solitary lives, herding sheep and rejecting the laws of men and gods. Unlike the divine craftsmen of Hesiod, these Cyclops lack industry and society, surviving by brute force alone. One of the most well-known Cyclops myths is found in the Odyssey, where Odysseus and his men are trapped in the cave of Polyphemus. The giant blocks the entrance with a massive boulder, eating several of Odysseus' men. Using his cunning, Odysseus devised a plan to escape. Odysseus offered the Cyclops strong wine, making him drunk and vulnerable. When the Cyclops asked for his name, Odysseus replied, "Nobody," tricking the giant into misunderstanding what's to come. When the Cyclops fell asleep, Odysseus and his men sharpen a wooden stake and drive it into the Cyclops' single eye, blinding him. When the Cyclops cries out in pain, he shouts, "Nobody is hurting me," leading the other Cyclopses to ignore his cries. The next morning, Odysseus and his crew escape by clinging to the underside of a sheep, slipping past the blinded giant undetected. However, as they flee, Odysseus' arrogance gets the better of him. He taunts Polyphemus and reveals his real name. Enraged, the Cyclops calls upon his father Poseidon to curse Odysseus, dooming the hero to years of hardship on his journey home. The Cyclops were not only known for their brute strength, but also their legendary craftsmanship. The ancient Greeks attributed massive, seemingly unmovable stone structures to the Cyclops, calling them Cyclopean architecture. These immense stone fortifications, built without mortar, were believed to be the work of beings far stronger than mere mortals. In later myths, the Cyclops continue their role as master smiths, working in the forge of Hephaestus, the god of fire and metalworking. They crafted the armour of the gods and heroes, including Achilles' shield. However, in some versions of the myth, Apollo slays the Cyclops in revenge for Zeus killing his son, blaming them for forging the thunderbolt that ended the child's life. The Gorgons are among the most infamous creatures in Greek mythology. Known for their terrifying appearance and deadly power, they were both feared and respected. While often portrayed as monstrous beings, the Gorgons were also deeply symbolic figures, representing themes of protection, punishment, and the boundary between life and death. Among them, Medusa is the most famous, but she was not alone. Her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were just as fearsome, though far less often mentioned in myth. The Gorgons were the daughter of Phorcys and Centaur, two primordial sea deities who gave birth to many monstrous beings in Greek mythology. While Medusa is often singled out, all three sisters shared terrifying traits. They had sharp fangs, golden wings, bodies covered in scales, and instead of hair, they had venomous snakes upon their heads. However, unlike Medusa, Stheno and Euryale were immortal, making them nearly invincible. Each of the Gorgons had distinct characteristics. Medusa, the Cursed One, the most well-known of the trio, was originally a beautiful mortal who was transformed into a Gorgon by Athena. Stheno the Mighty, the most vicious of the sisters, said to be the most bloodthirsty and dangerous. Euryale the Far-Roaming. Known for her bellowing cries, Euryale was said to have an otherworldly terrifying scream. Unlike other monsters in Greek mythology that were purely destructive, the Gorgons played multiple roles in myth. They were symbols of both terror and protection, often depicted on shields, armour, and temple carvings as apotheopatric symbols, images meant to ward off evil. The most famous tale involving a Gorgon is the story of Medusa and Perseus, a hero sent on an impossible quest to retrieve her head. Medusa's origin varies in different myths, but in the most common version, she was once a beautiful mortal maiden, a priestess of Athena. However, after an encounter with Poseidon in Athena's temple, the goddess transformed Medusa into a monster, ensuring that no man would ever look upon her again without turning to stone. King Polydectes, seeking to rid himself of Perseus, tasked the young hero with an impossible mission: to bring back Medusa's head. Aided by the gods, Perseus received help from Athena and Hermes, as well as the Grey, the three ancient sisters who shared a single eye and tooth. With their guidance, he acquired Hades' helm of invisibility, winged sandals, and a reflective shield. Armed with these divine gifts, Perseus entered Medusa's lair while she slept. Using the polished shield as a mirror, he avoided direct eye contact and swiftly beheaded Medusa with a single strike. From her severed neck sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysa, a warrior born from the blood of the Gorgon. Perseus carried Medusa's head as a powerful weapon, using it to petrify his enemies, including the sea monster Cetus, who threatened Andromeda, and ultimately King Polydectes himself. The Sphinx, a creature of mystery and terror in Greek mythology, was a formidable guardian and an embodiment of wisdom and destruction. With the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a woman, she was both majestic and fearsome. Most famously known for her role in the myth of Oedipus, the Sphinx is a creature that represents the power of knowledge, the inevitability of fate, and the deadly consequences of failing to solve her riddle. The origins of the Sphinx are tied to the monstrous lineage of Greek mythology. She was said to be the daughter of Typhon and Echidna, making her a sibling to other legendary creatures, such as Cerberus, the Hydra, and the Chimera. Sent by the gods, some say by Hera as punishment to the city of Thebes, the Sphinx took residence on a rock near the city's gates, becoming a cruel enforcer of a divine challenge. Her role was clear. No traveller could pass into Thebes without first answering her infamous riddle. Those who failed to answer correctly suffered a gruesome fate, devoured by the merciless Sphinx. As a result, the city of Thebes was trapped in fear, unable to break free from her deadly grip. The most famous tale of the Sphinx is intertwined with the story of Oedipus, the tragic prince of Thebes. When he arrived at the city, he was met by the Sphinx, who posed her legendary riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Many before him had failed to answer, meeting their demise at her claws. But Oedipus, possessing both intelligence and insight, solved the riddle with ease. Man. He crawls on all 4s as an infant, walks on 2 legs in adulthood, and in old age, he uses a cane, making it 3. Upon hearing the correct answer, the Sphinx was overcome with despair. In some versions of the myth, she threw herself from a cliff. In others, she simply vanished. With the Sphinx's demise, Thebes was freed from her curse, and Oedipus was hailed as a hero, though his fate, as foretold by prophecy, would be far from victorious.